A few weeks ago, Ellen DeGeneres' producer and DJ for The Ellen Show, Stephen Boss, known as Twitch, died by suicide, and that news hit me particularly hard. Twitch was a staple in The Ellen Show, and I watched The Ellen Show for many years, and he was just such a source of joy, of laughter, and of so much lightness.
Let's honor him and think about him and send love to one another.
So the news of his death was shocking to me. As soon as it happened, I felt a really strong pull to shoot a video about suicide, especially on the spiritual understanding of it. I get a ton of questions from people about suicide and the spiritual repercussions of it, and I've worked with many people who have dealt with suicidal ideation and who have even survived suicide attempts. So this topic is especially raw for me, also because it hits home. I almost died by suicide twice when I was a teenager, so I know very well what it feels like to be in this headspace, and I hope this video helps clear up all the questions that you have on suicide within the context of spirituality. Here's what I want to share in this video: what suicide means from a spiritual perspective, why it's on the rise on the planet, especially among empaths and sensitives, then what to do if you or someone you love is going through suicidal ideation or is actively suicidal. First, let's get into the spiritual perspective on suicide. I get a lot of questions about what happens to the soul of a person when they die by suicide. So some people ask me if the person gets stuck in some kind of karmic loop and then they're stuck down here. Other people, especially if they have religious formatting or religious programming, they'll ask if the person's soul gets sent to hell. None of that happens, okay? So when your soul departs the body, it returns home. It goes back to God or to Creator, to the universe, because that's the only place to go, in my opinion. So there's no eternal punishment for suicide. But that doesn't mean that we should go through with it. So suicide does carry a karmic load in the sense that it's a violent act, and violence carries karmic repercussions. So from a spiritual and energy perspective, if I hurt myself, that's energetically the same as me hurting someone else. So there's a karmic load associated with violence that then my soul is going to need to come back and resolve. Not to mention that also that suicide is a form of escapism. So when I go through with a suicide attempt, really what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to escape from a pain, a discomfort, or something within me that I just don't know how to resolve in the moment. But what people don't realize is that when the body dies and your soul transitions to the other side, you carry with you everything that you have left unresolved in this lifetime. So a lot of times people think that when they die, everything's going to be better and everything's going to be resolved. It is not, because your soul is on a multi-lifetime expansion. It's on a multi-lifetime evolutionary pathway. And so it won't resolve anything on the other side. So what ends up happening is the soul will leave the body, it'll get to the other side, and then it'll start planning a new physical form and a new physical life again in an attempt to come back and resolve in the physical what was left unresolved in the physical, all right? And this isn't done as a form of punishment. Your soul is not punishing you when it does this. The soul is just this beautiful energy that's constantly looking to heal and expand and move into eternity, really. And so it's just going to keep doing this as a part of the nature of the soul. That's what it does. So suicide never really works in terms of resolving things that you think you can't resolve now, because you're always going to come back to try and resolve them just in another lifetime. So you're going to have to start all over again. If you want to go deeper in the spiritual understanding of suicide, I highly recommend the book Home with God by Neale Donald Walsch. It's the last installment of his really popular series called Conversations with God, and it talks about suicide in a profound but very compassionate way. Now, aside from the spiritual repercussions of suicide, there's something even more important to talk about that isn't discussed in Western society, and that is that suicide is the consequence of a spiritual crisis. So I don't view suicide from purely a Western medical model or a Western psychiatric and psychological model. I view suicide in a much broader sense. And unfortunately, a lot of people are dying by suicide because they are not getting the help that they need in this Western society and in this Western model. They're not getting the help that they need because the help that they need goes far beyond viewing suicide as a mental illness, viewing suicide as a mental crisis. The help that people need is a help that needs to combine mind, body, and soul perspective. Here's something you may not know, but suicidal ideation is a very common feature of a spiritual awakening. Many people all over the world are going through spiritual awakenings right now, and a lot of them don't know what's happening to them. And a very common feature of a spiritual awakening is what's known as the death of the ego. Okay, so everything that has to do with your identity starts to die. So your personality shifts, your old habits shift, the way that you see yourself dies, old patterns die, your entire sense of identity dies. And there's actually an internal drive that's happening during a spiritual awakening. There's an internal drive precisely for all of that stuff to die. But one of the biggest tragedies that happens with suicide is that many people mistake the desire for an ego death with the impulse to actually kill themselves. They unfortunately misinterpret the symbolic death that's happening inside of them, and they assume that that symbolic death means actual death. Now let's get into why suicide is on the rise on the planet. And there's really two main reasons why this is happening, especially among sensitives and empaths. The first reason is that there's a lack of support. Okay, so people are going through spiritual awakenings by the millions right now, but a lot of this is happening within very rigid Western type of medical models, where psychiatry and psychology are predominant, and suicide is viewed purely as a mental issue or a mental illness or as part of mental illness. But suicide can be seen outside of a pure Western medical model. And in fact, if we don't open up to this, if these templates don't open up, we're going to have a lot more people dying by suicide because they're going through spiritual awakenings and they're just not receiving the support that they need. So now all of this is exploding on the planet, and we're starting to see more and more people seek spiritual answers and understand suicide from a spiritual perspective. So the lack of support is really jarring because there's millions of people that are going through spiritual awakenings right now, and the system isn't yet ready. Our culture, our society isn't yet ready and fully open to the idea of providing this spiritual support and providing this spiritual help. And so a lot of people are falling through the cracks right now. A lot of times what happens when people go through spiritual awakenings, especially if they get to the phase of suicidal ideation or being actively suicidal, what's happening from a spiritual perspective, I like to use the term transformational crisis. Okay, so it's a crisis, but it's a crisis that's happening because of the profound transformations that these people are going through, and they're just misinterpreting those inner transformations for a call to end their lives. Okay, so they're misinterpreting. There is some misunderstanding going on, and so this transformational crisis, it can't be handled by just your standard MD or your standard psychologist. It has to be helped. People have to be helped with helpers, and they have to have support of people that understand the spiritual understanding of what is happening to them, and the people that have experience in working with people who have these profound transformational crises. And, fortunately, everything is changing. I work with a lot of my clients are actually physicians, psychologists, and I've worked with a lot of physicians and psychologists who are themselves having spiritual awakenings. And so now they're going out into the world and they're wanting to practice medicine in a different way, or they're wanting to do their therapy sessions in a different way. And so they're seeking that spiritual understanding, and they will then be able to help other people going through these transformational crises. So that's wonderful. It's just in the meantime, while we're going through these deep shifts on the planet, there just seems to be a lot more people waking up than there are practitioners or spiritual support to help them. And so people can be falling through the cracks. But please share this video. The more that we share this message and the more that we help get out there this message of suicide as a transformational crisis, or suicidal ideation as a transformational crisis, we'll be able to help so many people, and we'll be able to avert many, many suicides on this planet, hopefully. The second reason why suicide is on the rise on the planet, especially among sensitives and empaths, is because of the rapid ascension of the planet. So you have to remember that we're evolving individually, but so is the planet herself. She's a sentient being. Her energy is changing, and her energy has changed dramatically, especially in the last few years, very quick shifts in energy. And when the planet does this, what ends up happening is we're all affected by it, and it creates some temporary chaos, temporary energetic chaos on the planet, and it usually translates into some kind of outer chaos. Violence, protests, wars, political turmoil, mandates and restrictions, stuff with government. So a lot of stuff happens on the outside as a response to this shift in energy on the planet, and it's temporary. temporary, but it could be very, very jarring for someone who is already going through all the inner transformations that go with a transformational crisis. So imagine if you're a sensitive and an empath and you're already going through all these ego deaths, you're going through this severe transformation, you're going through the suicidal ideation, you don't know what the heck, how to get help or where to get help, you don't know what's happening to you. And then you look on TV and there's a war here and there's a protest there and there's this happening there. It can really be almost overwhelming to the system of a sensitive. And so suicides can end up happening there because the person doesn't know where to turn to. They don't know. They look outside and it feels like it's a chaos, and they look inside and it feels like it's a chaos too, all right? But now that you're watching this video, you'll know that with the right tools and with the right energy and with the right support, you can stay grounded and you can have the seek meaning and understanding on what's happening to you so that you're not as affected by the outside energy as much. But when you're in the midst of a transformational crisis, it can really feel overwhelming. Now let's get into what to do, all right? So if you or someone you love is going through suicidal ideation right now, here are 4 simple tips to help you out and really help you make sense of things. Tip number 1 is to seek spiritual answers, okay? So go beyond the Western medical model in understanding suicide as mental illness. Go beyond that, expand your horizons, seek information that's more spiritually driven. If you're watching this video right now and you're watching my videos, you're already going into the spiritual side of it and you're having an understanding that's more broad. And please share this video with anyone who you feel like really needs to have that spiritual understanding of suicide. The deeper that you go, the more broad you cast your net, the more you'll be able to be helped and to understand what's happening to you, to understand all of those deep transformations like we talked about a little while ago, that ego death, the changes that are happening inside of you. There are really important spiritual explanations for those things, and you're not going to find them in the Western medical model. And so that's going to be good for you to expand your horizons. It will really help to make sense of what's happening to you if you are going through suicidal ideation. I also recommend the wonderful, wonderful book, The Stormy Search for the Self by Stan and Christina Grof, 2 pioneers in the field of transpersonal psychology. Stan Grof is a psychiatrist, actually, and one of the pioneers of transpersonal psychology, which is a branch of psychology that looks at the person and has an understanding of what spiritual awakenings are and what spiritual crises are. And so that field of psychology, that area of psychology, will be able to help you out. And this book is a must read for anyone going through any type of spiritual crisis or a spiritual awakening. Tip number 2 is to seek out spiritual support. Okay, so there's nothing wrong with talking to a psychotherapist or going to a psychiatrist. There's nothing wrong inherently about the Western medical model. It just needs to be complemented. So branch out again and get help from other helpers, from other practitioners like healers, shamans, coaches. Get help from people or psychiatrists and psychologists that are trained in this field of transpersonal psychology like I just talked about, or practitioners that come from a traditional medical model like I did. That was my training, I was a physical therapist in that traditional, more Western medical model. But the practitioners have then graduated from that traditional medical model, and then they went out and they learned more. They wanted to seek more. They wanted to expand their knowledge. And so they ended up getting trained in transpersonal psychology or in different fields. So they know about the spirituality part. Seek out spiritual support from these helpers also, because this is going to give you a really, really deep understanding of what's happening to you, and you're going to receive the help that you need much more than if you just went to a traditional psychiatrist or a traditional psychologist with no spiritual background. Tip number 3 is to seek spiritual community. So suicides decrease exponentially when there is connection and when there is community, especially a community that understands you. So seek a community, and this could be a physical community or an online community, but make sure to seek a community where people are having spiritual awakenings, okay? So it's a specific type of community. You want to connect with people who are also having spiritual awakenings because they will understand on a deeper level where this suicidal ideation is coming from. They'll understand that it's coming coming from an ego death, that it's coming from deep transformation, and they will help guide you so you won't feel alone. A lot of times suicides occur when people feel like they don't have anyone that they could talk to that will understand what they're feeling, and so they feel isolated and alone, and they end up going through with killing themselves because they feel this isolation and this loneliness. So seek out community. If you don't have a physical community close to you, online is perfect. If you don't follow me on Instagram, follow me on YouTube, follow me on Instagram. Look for other teachers also. Follow them. Look through their feeds. Belong to their communities. And the more that you do this, you're going to start meeting people that are also going through profound transformations, and you will start understanding that what you thought may have been an impulse to actually end your physical life was actually a symbolic death, and you'll be able to understand this in a deeper level so your life can continue, because you have so much to do down here, and community will help you get through the difficulties that happen with this ego death and with the spiritual crisis that comes with suicidal ideation. Tip number 4 is spiritual practices. I don't know where I would be without my spiritual practices, especially when I was going through the toughest parts of my spiritual awakening. So I was suicidal when I was a teenager, but then, I kind of got over it, and the years passed. When I had my spiritual awakening in 2013, and then immediately after a Kundalini awakening, the suicidal ideation came back, and it came back so intensely that it was very scary for me because I hadn't felt like that since I was a teenager. And what spiritual practices did for me was they quite literally saved my life, because they helped keep my system calm. They helped keep me calm and grounded and very clear on what was happening. So incorporate spiritual practices into your life. Do them every single day. And it could be spiritual practices like meditation. It could be spiritual practices like praying. It could be spiritual practices of chanting. There are a plethora of spiritual practices, but the more that you do your spiritual practices day in and day out, these practices will help you weather the difficulties, especially if you're going through suicidal ideation right now. And if you don't know where to start in terms of spiritual practices, you have no idea what I'm talking about, check out this video right here that tells you, it literally guides you through some of the most common spiritual practices that I use, and especially the ones you should be using right now in these crazy times on planet Earth. And especially, don't forget that you are so loved, that you are so needed down here, and that you may be going through a symbolic death, but that does not mean that it's a call to end your physical life. Always remember that, beautiful soul. And I'm always here. Follow me on Instagram and follow me on YouTube. I'm always here. We are in this together, and you're meant to be on this earth. Your soul wants to be here. I love you, and I'll talk to you later.